And hey, YouTube, let's do this. Welcome to Squatch Talk. I'm Pat. How's everybody doing tonight? Skipping the intro because I was having some technical problems. So I kind of have a window for tonight's show and didn't want to waste 3, 4, 5 minutes on the intro. So some people will love that. Some people will hate it. Welcome to the Bigfoot world. But whatever, man. I'm just going to bring the guest in right away and we'll start talking Squatch, man. And here he is, Mr.
Hello.
Caucasian Sasquatch himself.
How you doing, bud?
Fellow Georgia boy.
Yeah, man. I'm curious. I got a question for you right off the rip.
All right.
What do you know? What do you know about American chestnuts?
Right. So we've had that conversation, oddly enough. That's the first time I ever met you. You jumped into a show that I was in, right? Pine Islands. I think it was Jeff's show. And you started telling me about that. And now I know more about the blight than I ever knew. I never knew there was a blight. Never knew that you could just walk up and down the Appalachians with, if you needed it, endless amounts of food, and that's not a thing anymore.
Not at all.
Yeah,
and
because of the blight.
Before the chestnut blight, you could feasibly have a Sasquatch type creature east of the Mississippi. After the blight, I'm not so convinced. There's still hickory nuts, walnuts, acorns, and very sweet acorns, and various other things, but most of it has to be processed to some extent before it's actually edible. So
I guess the pecans, they grow more in the flatlands, don't they?
Well, there's different types of pecans. Yes, sir. We got some here, like a whole bunch. But you have to keep in mind, the American chestnut is not even endangered. There are millions of them in the forests of Georgia today. It's just that none of them come to maturity and none of them make nuts.
Right.
So however many pecans you put out there, it will never be the 1 in 4 trees that was once the American chestnut.
Well, you know what? Maybe Monsanto can spray some kind of shit on them, make them.
There's various there are various teams working on trying to build or inoculate, because it doesn't really do any good to breed a blight resistant American chestnut. You can't plant enough to replace them. No one will let them grow long enough to replace them.
Right.
But
yeah.
If you could do some kind of inoculation to current existing stands of American chestnut trees, they would insinuate themselves into the understory growth. They would just magically reappear. I know it sounds insane, but that seems to be the math of it.
No, like I believe you do. Like, again, you dropped some knowledge on me that day. I was like, I'd never even heard of this, and it's thought provoking. It's a different angle. And just for that fact alone, I loved what you were talking about that day. And
I did a whole show on it. I covered like 45, 47 years from the introduction of the blight until there were no American chestnuts available, which was several years after the extinction of the production of chestnuts. To this day, there are a couple of still extant living producing chestnut trees. They're out west. Most of them were taken there before the blight, and the blight never made it that far because it doesn't carry through other species. So if you bring those here, they have the same problem that the original chestnuts have. They're from the same stock, so they have the same built-in like malady.
Fascinating. And I'll look into that more. Yeah.
Are we talking dogman or Sasquatch today? It says dogman.
We always start off with Sasquatch, and then usually dogman never gets brought up. But I don't know. I'm just kind of feeling maybe a dogman segment tonight. but we might make that second or third segment.
I personally kind of have a little bit of an issue with the carnivorous creature that exists east of Mississippi because there's not a whole lot of available game north of a certain line because of the way the mountains and the topography come together. You end up with a lot lower biodiversity. It's not like the Pacific Northwest where we have salmon running up streams and all kinds of stuff like that. We don't have a situation like that. For a hardcore carnivore to survive on the East Coast would be difficult without a full pack, and that would be, I think, noticeable in deer populations and whatnot. So I kind of have an issue with that. West Coast, no problem.
Interesting. So, I mean, I don't know. Is there plenty of deer? Like, I don't know. I don't have a head count. I know that,
every
they track them.
Every 6 years, we have to run a deer call in Georgia. This is a point where they pull out all the stops. There are no tags. You don't have to measure anything. You just go out and murder deer to your heart's content for 14 days, 27 days. And during these time periods, the state sometimes county officials, sometimes it's just a municipality or a hunting club in particular, will gather together a bunch of volunteers, go out and run a fire line to run deer out to a point and just massacre them en masse. And it's because they tend to breed about 20% greater than the depredation limits. So we don't have wolves. We have people.
Right. Just
people aren't hunting enough, or specifically hunting the right deer. They're hunting trophy bucks instead of hunting the ones that are straggly and old and decrepit and sick. And they're going for the strongest, not the weakest.
Right. True.
That's no good for the species.
Yeah.
So the introduction of things like wolves and the larger coy dogs that have started appearing East Coast would lend itself towards the management of deer populations. But that's not the only problem we have here with there being a dogman East Coast. First of all, I don't think we'd have a deer population problem if there were dogmen on the East Coast. There's also pigs, and they are an absolute travesty to the landscape, to the tune of like millions and millions and millions of dollars a year. And yet again, would we have a pig population problem on the East Coast if we had an intelligent race of carnivorous animals that hunted in packs? Don't think so. If I was the carnivorous animal, you wouldn't have a pig problem on the East Coast.
Yeah. True story, because like human beings can't get rid of the damn pig problem, man. And I mean, that's a free for all. Like, you see a hog, kill it, right? Or is it? I mean, there's not hog season.
It's totally invasive. And let me tell you a secret about a pig. Pigs are a very rare type of species. They share a whole bunch of double and triple tandem genes. If you take a slick, smooth, pink Lancashire racer pig, you turn them loose into the wild, they will run out there and in 6 to 8 weeks will vaguely resemble something along the lines of a Russian boar or a European boar. They'll get real coarse haired. They'll grow humps on their head. They'll get big tuskies. Their tail will go from curly to straight. And this all happens pretty quick. Once they go feral, I'm unaware of an ability to unferal a pig.
They go feral fast.
It's pretty quick. And they don't care about species or any of that. Javelinas can't breed with pigs, but pigs and javelinas are different things, right?
Yeah.
So they taste the same. You can make bacon out of both of them, but they're different.
Yeah, they're pork. Yeah. The feral ones they might be a little more gamey, but
I don't know. I don't think I've ever had a javelina. I seen one time wild in Georgia, but I was utterly flummoxed by what it was because I knew it wasn't a pig. Exactly. It was almost a pig, but it wasn't quite a pig.
So let me ask you this: like, there's no shortage maybe of meat for Bigfoot. I mean, are you gonna notice that in the deer population? Are you going to notice that? I mean, the pig thing, forget about
all
it,
right.
right?
So the premise of the initial question of Bigfoot East Coast versus West Coast, and the question of dogman East Coast versus West Coast, I think comes down to what I refer to as the food corridors of both the East and West Coast, being the mountains. And in our case, over here on the East Coast, we have the cloud forest and a little fringe of rainforest, and then we got like the Piedmont and the plains. Then you get down into the Everglades down yonder, and that's a whole other ecosystem down there. Right.
True.
So like skunk ape and them folks could have their own way of handling things. It doesn't get cold enough to actually kill off bugs, and it's an absolute nightmare all the time. And then you've got the swamp puppies everywhere, and they'll get you. There might be some dog men down there. I don't have an issue with that at all. There's plenty of food. The issue I have is in the eastern food corridor, the cloud forest, the largest ecosystem on the East Coast. I think that would have to be the root of any large bipedal anything for the East Coast. And I'm pretty sure gorillas and chimpanzees would be able to subsist somewhere along that line. So why not Sasquatch? What we don't have is a bunch of giant dire wolves running up and down the East Coast. So maybe not dogman.
Well, so the Appalachian chain, man, I mean, that's one hell of a mountain range.
It is.
It's one, it's 100 to 300 miles wide in some places. And it basically goes,
from here to Canada.
Some sparse. Yeah. I mean, it goes up into Canada. There's a few weird little sparse areas. But I mean, obviously, human beings can walk from, here to Maine on one trail. Right. So, I mean, it's so vast and relatively remote that, I mean, that's it. That's if there's an undiscovered hominin on the East Coast, man, that's its bread and butter, is the way I would look at it.
50-50 on like the Okefenokee swamp versus the cloud forest of North Georgia up through the Blue Ridge. Because both of those locations would have enough food for a large bipedal hominid to wander around completely unbeknownst to the world, provided they didn't exit certain areas. Now, North Georgia has more unoccupied wilderness because of state parks and whatnot. But South Georgia and North Florida are fairly competitive on that same front. It's just a totally different ecosystem.
Yeah, and terrain and I mean everything. It's so thick down there, man. I mean, the thickness is just out of control, and it's thick up here in the summer. What I like, the thing I say about North Georgia is in the summer it's Vietnam, and in the winter it's Hiroshima. I mean, but that thickness down there, man, the area you're talking about that's pretty much year round. I don't know how much thinning out happens, if any,
As far as frost is concerned, like this past year was the first time in like the past 8 years that I've had water issues due to something freezing. So it doesn't. We don't own snow material. We don't have salt deposits. We don't do none of that stuff. There's no such thing as it might snow. It doesn't stick. The last time I made a snowman was 1986, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, it doesn't do it often. It'll get cold. Don't misunderstand me. This last time when it froze, it didn't snow. It didn't rain. It just went from 68 degrees on a Tuesday to -2 for the first time in my life. It's plummeted. I don't know how cold it got because my thermometer stopped going down.
Yeah.
So
I remember that.
It froze a 2-inch slab on top of my aquaponics and completely trashed out the whole system. Every joint, everywhere things come together, had an issue. It didn't break it. I ended up being able to like take it apart, put it back together and fix it, but it almost trashed the whole system.
Yeah, I remember that polar freeze that came down. It was like it was around Christmas time, if I remember correctly. But
Yeah, it was serious. I'll tell you another thing that happened. We we got these transformers around here, and apparently when it spikes cold like that, the local squirrels will go and climb up in the transformer to try to stay warm,
yep.
and then they get zapped. And so you you can walk down Main Street over here, and when it gets really, really, really cold, you can hear the transformers zapping up and down the street from what I guess is the squirrels in them. That's what I was told anyway.
Hey, perfectly prepared fried squirrel. Who needs chestnuts, dude? You got you got fried squirrels just everywhere.
I don't know if I'd eat it.
Come on, man. Everybody in Georgia eats squirrel, man. Come on.
Hey, I didn't say I wouldn't eat squirrel, just not one zapped on a telephone pole or whatever. I got my limits, man. A little bit of roadkill between friends, that's one thing. But when you get down to the things falling out of light poles, we gotta double think this.
All right, yeah. So clearly, man. So you're South Georgia. I'm North Georgia.
Middle Georgia. I'm not far from Milledgeville.
Okay, gotcha. But yeah. So, but you could dip to the south there.
Oh yeah, I function out of Savannah more than Atlanta. Yeah,
which is brilliant. I concur with your lifestyle choices there.
Right?
Yeah, I live in Gainesville, so I'm just 20 miles south of the AT here. I can see the mountains out in the distance. So I'm North Georgia. You're middle of the South.
Yeah, they call it the heart of Georgia around here. Yeah.
Right. So let me ask you this, because before we do that, let's talk about your name.
All
right. So
you want that story? You want the whole story, right?
Yeah.
I was just hoping you'd ask me out.
And you don't have to tell the whole story, dude. This is not an encounter show. But just because
this is not exactly an encounter. And you know why I say that. I call it my fur coat, my hobo and a fur coat story.
Yes. And we'll get to that. But just because I'm sure you're asked about your name, especially in 2023, no, Caucasian Sasquatch doesn't mean white boy Sasquatch. That's not what it means, okay?
Not exactly, no.
Yeah.
So I've seen
it's because something that you've seen. So just like quickly, man, tell me about what you've seen, because I'm kind of fascinated with you being on I'm fascinated with you being like not sure, but yeah.
All right. So 1997 was a fairly heavy drought year. Really, really hot, almost no rain locally. It had rained elsewhere, but not here. And so it didn't register as a huge drought. But the area here hadn't seen rain in like 37 days. It was bad. The local beavers had started building a secondary dam below the first one to hold in even more water so that it wouldn't drop any lower. That only happens in the worst years. Where I live out there at my pop's is like an island between a couple of different beaver dams. Some are above the property, some are below the property, but the property itself is above water, and there's water everywhere else. It's just this 200 and some odd acre, 250 something acre swamp on about 4 different layers of depth. So you have some above us and some below us, but the ones above are generally smaller than the ones below, because the one below the dam may go 2 miles. The ones above just stretch from here to there across this little bit of creek and back up water. Anyway, it was so dry that when I decided to go hunting, I found nothing moving. No birds, there were no squirrels, no nothing. It was so hot and so dry that nobody was interested in moving. So I decided that this wasn't working out, and I went by my pop's truck, picked up my little giddy bag to go fishing, figuring there's a sinkhole out in the swamp, and the story goes that there's always water in the medlock hole. Little kid, no matter how dry it gets, there'll be water in the medlock hole. Okay. So I've never seen the swamp this dry in my life. It is an unbelievable sight. Usually it's miles and miles and miles of water, and now it was miles and miles and miles of empty meadow. Grass had started growing up between the trees out there. So I decided to wander out and see how far it had actually dried up, and I took my fishing pole with me and figured I'd go check out the medlock hole while I was at it, and I'd never seen it that dry. And there's absolutely nothing to say about the trip. It was interesting. I saw stuff, nothing amazing, no footprints, no nothing, until I got to the medlock hole, which is identified by these 3 massive cypresses that grow kind of on one side of it. And you can see them from way far away. So you know that's the medlock hole over there, although trying to find it on a boat, especially at night, could be an issue. But there's a bunch of trees everywhere else, but those stick up higher. Once you get in the trees underneath it in the water, you can't really see where you're at in relation to those trees. That makes sense? Anyway,
absolutely. Yeah.
None of that water's there. The creek has reduced down to probably 1.5 feet wide, running through sand. It is amazing. I've never seen that little water going through. And so I went up to the medlock hole. And when I come up to where I could see straight to where the little sinkhole is, there's this dude squatted down drinking out of the medlock hole. And I'm like, hey, man, probably shouldn't be drinking that. And when I said, hey, man, he looked over his shoulder, kind of huffed, stood up, and walked immediately away. And I just kind of held my gun up and stood there because he was naked, and that kind of freaked me out. But he glances over his shoulder again and then walks on up the hill towards where the one little island is over yonder, and went up in the trees and disappeared. And I just stood there and I went, the hell did I just see? It looked like a person. He was a bikini wax away from voting Democrat. I'm just saying, he didn't quite look human, and something about the way he ambulated didn't seem quite right. And the shape of his face wasn't quite correct. Like, unlike me, this is why I use this image. He has no beard where I have beard, and I have beard where he has no beard. Right? It was like that, but on a person face. It's hard to explain, dude. But he wasn't dark. He wasn't red. He was a weird, like, tortoise shell color. Had he been standing anywhere else, if he had been 10 foot to the right or 10 foot to the left, I may not have noticed him, just because he would blend in so well. But because he was standing right where he was standing with the white sand on the other side of the water, I saw him, the reflection, and the white sand and his outline, with no way for it to be broken up. And I thought it was a person even then. So was it a feral person that I stumbled across who's running around uncircumcised in a Georgia swamp at 114 degrees in a fur coat? Or did I see something slightly less than human? I don't.
What was the level of hair on the body?
You ever seen a tortoiseshell cat?
No, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
All right. Kind of like a short hair cat. It wasn't coarse and hair. It wasn't like a gorilla. I've seen a gorilla relatively up close, and the hair was different. There's long hairs and short hairs, but the short hairs is like peach fuzz. The long hairs is kind of like this here. Like if I had peach fuzz in between my furs, or had furs in between my hairs. I don't know how to explain.
I mean, is it fair to call it hairy?
Fuzzy, hairy. It wasn't skin. There was some peach fuzz everywhere, except for a couple of particular places. Right here, where I have fur, he didn't. And down here on the neck, he had these 2 little bits that stuck out, kind of like my hair here does, except It was just down here. Not like he shaved, but like it just grew in all white and trashy like that.
Huh.
You know?
Goddamn trash.
Didn't have a whole lot of long hair on the back, but right at the very, very back, sort of like a little micro mullet, there was a little sort of mane type thing that went down his neck, just a hair, but I couldn't tell whether it was attached to his skull or is it attached to his back. I don't know. It was just a little poof, sort of like a micro afro.
Did it look like it was sticking up?
It kind of looked like he had been standing there drinking and had run his hands through his hair, pushed it all back, kind of. But I couldn't tell whether it was like that all the time or just right now because it was wet. And I don't know for a fact it was wet, just that it was poofy in the back, but not in the top. I couldn't really see his ears. I did see his thumb, and it kind of looked like the end of it had been nibbed off or something. Didn't look right. Because when he was drinking, he held his hand up like that, and I could see the thumb or the lack thereof. Like it was wrong.
Huh. But he had a goofy looking face.
All right, so the nose didn't stick out like ours. It was much more this way. What's the term? Pugnacious? That
flat?
word.
I mean, more flat.
Pugnacious. Yeah, it was flat nosed, but the nose didn't protrude from the face quite as much as you is. I mean, this is the whole reason why I have this like that. Yeah. Wide, but not aqualine. It didn't stick out.
Well, you know what? I can. There. If you bring that up again, I can solo you.
I mean, if I had just seen the face, I might have thought it was a chimp. If I had just seen it stand up and walk away, I'd have thought it was a dude in a suit. Except that I saw his dangly bits. So probably not a suit or a really, really, really good one. But the point is, nobody ever found out about it. This wasn't something that I went and tried to tell people about. In fact, the very first time I mentioned it to anybody, it was probably 2 years later. I was, this is going to sound kind of dumb, and it might even sound a little fake. I really don't care. I can't help who people call what. There's a buddy of mine named Buford. Everybody calls him Pee-wee. Pee-wee is about as close to being a feral human as you can get and still be on the census.
Yeah.
Right. My man would disappear for months at a time and go trapping beaver and stuff off in the hinterlands. And he was the first person I brought up this particular interaction with. And I was like, you remember back when it was so dry? He's like, yeah. I said, well, I went out to the Medlock hole and I saw something. And I don't know whether it was a dude or a critter. And he was like, oh, you seen the guy, huh? And I was like, there's a guy that lives out behind my house, and I'm just now finding out about it. It's like, I'm not sure if he's a guy or a dude or might be a critter or something. It might be an orangutan. I'm not sure. I ain't never actually got a good look at it. I was like, well, it's not an orangutan. I guarantee you that. And he's like, you get a good look at it? I said, yeah, all but snuck up on it by accident. He's like, how you do that? I was like, he was drinking. It was during the drought, and I reminded him of the whole situation. He's like, oh yeah, boy, that would have been just about a perfect time to go looking for one of them things. That's about the only place there would be water out there. And I said, yes, sir. And I went out there to go fishing. So maybe he was too. I don't know. But he looked disappointed when he saw me. And he didn't do any anger, no kind of nothing, just walked away. Now, I will admit, I walked over and stuck my foot. I pulled my shoe off, stuck my foot in the print, and then put my shoe back on and walked straight home. I didn't look back. I didn't look around for him. I didn't hunt for nothing. I felt like I had invaded someone's living room and I should probably leave.
Interesting. How big was the print?
The print, I'm a size 10.5. It was a little bit bigger than me. Yeah, it happened in Georgia. Not terribly far south of Milledgeville.
What's up, Brian?
Out here We have
Ryan's a Georgia boy too. He grew up in North Georgia. He was a cop in Atlanta for 15 years. We'll forgive him for that, but yeah.
Gotta do something to pass the time, man. We have these things out here called paper plantations where nobody lives. It's not like there's anything out there but trees, but that's what's there. It's trees, and that's who owns the properties. And a lot of times these places are occupied by different hunting organizations who take on certain levels of management for the area in exchange for the right to like freely hunt without. I don't know how far the seasons go into that stuff. I know that seasons matter, but on private property under certain circumstances, I'm not sure what the rules are there. I just know that you can hunt just about something all the time. Something. Right. I don't know what all it is. There's whole clubs and organizations that arrange for burn-offs and animal culling and introduction of species and all kinds of other stuff. Like, there's been a big push to replace the brown trout around here, and I don't know if it's working or not. I have no idea.
So you say this is around the Milledgeville area, basically?
Yeah. I'm not going to get very much closer to it than that because
yes,
I don't see any point in anybody bothering the man. He's out there chilling. He seemed fairly happy, if a little disappointed.
Right. And it's pretty flat out there, right? I mean,
no, I'm in the foothills. I'm squarely on the very edge of the foothills, but in it. Yes. Okay. You go about 15, 20 miles south, you're back in the Piedmont flatlands. You go 15, 20 miles east, and you kind of drop out of the hills and into the, I don't know what you consider those like in eastern. I guess there's a few mountains in northern Alabama too, ain't there?
Yeah, there is.
You can probably just cruise right on across the hills right that way, but none of the roads do that. They all go south.
Right.
Get to the flatland. So couldn't tell you as far as that direction, but yeah, pretty much any direction you go from here goes to a plain almost immediately.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, no, I mean it's interesting, and of course, it's the one thing that nobody ever talks about. You don't hear a lot about the Bigfoot dong or potential Bigfoot dong.
Yeah, I've never heard anything about them.
You're the first person. You're the first person that I've ever heard, and anything I've ever listened to Bigfoot, anything like going back all the way to the fucking 1970s in the $6 Million Man.
Bits.
Yes, you were the first person to say, nope, I'm sorry, the second. I apologize for that. You're the second person I've heard say, but the first person I've ever heard say publicly, uncircumcised. I clearly saw an uncircumcised penis.
Absolutely.
And I'm always thinking, because I've heard about people talking about Bigfoot penises before, and they never go there. And I'm like, well, what did it look like?
Well, I want to point out, being a young boy from Georgia, this was the first uncircumcised penis I'd ever actually laid eyes on, and ever, like ever.
Right. Yeah,
so
I believe that. Sure,
it left an impression beyond I just saw some dude. And like I said, I always called it the hobo in a fur coat story, because if there's some dude living out there, I'm not using that section of swamp, and I have no idea how he is, but have at it. He ain't bothering nobody out there. Why should anybody go bother him? I felt bad for bothering him myself. It obviously disappointed him. I saw the disappointment on his face.
Yeah, I think there's something to that, actually. That sounds like actually a very powerful effect it left on you.
Yeah.
Is because you've touched on it 3 or 4 times now, is that you felt bad for bothering him. That's
I wasn't hunting a Bigfoot. Had I stumbled up on a deer or maybe a turkey, if it was the right season, right, I wouldn't have even batted an eye. I'd have just executed the kill and took it home and cleaned it and ate it, and it would have been fine. But this short circuited all of that. That whole thought process. It never even crossed my mind that I just saw Bigfoot or I just saw skunk ape or I just saw anything like that and I should document it. I was just like, my bad, dude, go back to bathing or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Which also brings up the point. So it was obviously, dude, it was never a thought in your head to raise your firearm at it.
Defensively, after not realizing this isn't a bear, this isn't a cat, this could well be a person, and people don't go here unarmed. And if there's a naked man standing there, it's probably a naked man, at least with a machete or a pistol. So like, I did pick up my gun, and that was as far as I got because he just walked away. As soon as he locked eyes with me, he took off. He didn't run, but he did not linger.
Right. He just kind of walked off.
Mm-hmm. He was no longer here and was elsewhere.
Was he checking back?
No, he never looked over his shoulder.
Back at you.
First time he looked back, and then he stood up, flicked his hand like to get the water off of it, and just walked straight uphill, straight away from the water. And just as he turned square, he glanced to, like, I guess, see if I was following or whatever. But then he just walked away, and I just stood there with my head cocked to the side, like, what the hell did I just see? What? I couldn't make it a person in my head, but at the same time, there's nothing else it could possibly have been, right? Right? Yeah. You got to get into mythical creatures and stuff before you start getting into things that could have been. So it rattled my nut. Shook the cage around a little bit. Had to go think about it.
Sure. It seems like you're maybe still thinking about it because it seems to me that you're willing to you're still willing to throw it into the feral human category. It sound like to me.
I've got a couple of cousins that might be hairier. Maybe.
Wow.
They're pretty fuzzy. And if they was running around out there naked and uncircumcised, I maybe, but they have noses and their beards grow in like mine, not like that.
Right. So there's enough differential things happening there to make
they have entire cubs.
Yeah.
And like when they walk real fast, they don't keep their knees bent. Like this thing did this weird little wobbly walk, but at the same time, he had the muscular tone of somebody who did a lot of running or walking, like a European footballer somehow.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, fit.
Very. Not there might have been a half ounce of fat on him everywhere, all over, all taken.
That's fucking fit, man.
And with that, just a little bit of fuzzy hair everywhere, it really didn't hide a whole lot to speak of. Because up on the shoulders, there's like longer tresses, but then further down, there's like no tail or nothing like that. He just flammed it away. Plop, 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 gone. The term I like to use is with alacrity, because he was not in a huge hurry, but he wasn't staying here.
Yeah. He just moved with purpose away from you.
It became obvious he didn't want me to follow him by the way he walked away. And I was like, yep. And I hope he don't follow me neither. And I turned and just went straight home. Like there was no longer any point in being here. Yeah, some homeless bodybuilder wandering around out there with a brand new fur coat. That was my first thought, of course.
I know, right? Yeah.
I have had a lot of drug-induced and drunken conversations about this encounter. I have sat around campfires. I have sat around all sorts of wild, and people would ask, what do you think it was? So I split up the week on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. Mm-hmm. I think it was a rogue bodybuilder in a fur coat looking for some protein. On the other days, it was some breed of Sasquatch or another.
Something we refer to as Sasquatch.
Sure.
I mean,
well, his feet weren't that big, so that's not Bigfoot, is
it? Exactly. I mean, that's just a word. That's just a word. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Here's something that no one will ever ask you live on air when you're telling this story. Are you full of shit, man?
I have seen a thing. Did I say I saw Sasquatch? No. I saw a person, perhaps. Why he was where he was, doing what he was doing, I couldn't tell you. I spent the first year convinced I found a person. Talked to some people, they convinced me maybe it wasn't. I've spent the last couple of years kind of wandering generally, and I've gone as far as to look into food sources and whatnot for just such a critter to be wandering around out there. And I believe there's just enough for a few. I'm not sure if it would be a breedable solution, but perhaps if they were mixing with feral humans, maybe. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of people off the grid in Georgia, baby. A whole bunch.
True story.
Yeah.
So, do you continue to sort of seek them out and maybe?
Absolutely not. Nope.
You don't?
I have not been back in that general area since that occurred, except for once when we went looking for someone who got lost. And they weren't out there. They were elsewhere. They actually ran off with some chick. But we did spend 2 days out there looking for him.
Gotcha. And obviously you said the conditions were different because of the drought at the time.
If I were to take you out there today, and it's not exactly juicy right now, it's pretty dry. We're in mid-July. If I were to take you out there right now, we would need 2 canoes to get there. Because I'm not letting you get into a canoe with me. I don't trust you.
Right. Yeah.
I don't like swimming, and we got swamp puppies. Hard pass. You're on your own.
Yeah, I'll get Matt. I'll get my buddy Matt up, and he'll canoe around that area. Yeah, that's kind of like, and I'll have to look at that on the map because I'm really fascinated I've become fascinated with the idea of where they could be and where they can't be. And that area sort of escapes me right now, but you're talking middle Georgia. And
you ever heard of the fall line?
No.
All right. The fall line is the distinguishing geographical feature between the foothills of Georgia and the actual Piedmont plains of the coast.
Okay, I am familiar with that. Yes.
Okay. So the fall line runs perpendicular across the vertical axis of Georgia. It basically runs from South Carolina all the way across to Alabama, and it's just a clay layer between point A and point B. If you're above this line, you're officially in the foothills. If you're below this line, you're officially on the plains.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The coastal Piedmont. So I'm on the fault line.
Right.
I'm right there.
Yeah, I'm thinking more where they could dip to. I mean, like where they can actually exist or where they could pass through or be around and dip to. That's why I brought up else, you know.
There are paper plantations over here that are 500,000 acres that no one ever goes to until it's time to cut some part of it. They have 101 year renewable leases and will never be occupied by the hand of man except to cut certain trees.
All right. I did not know that.
There's a few of them out here. A lot of them were set up like pre-Revolutionary War.
Now, if they're in that area, just let me pick your brain is all I'm doing. If they're in that area and they really had to dip out, would the to the south be more advantageous or to the
I would
north?
think so. To the north, you're running into the whole New York metroplex of the East Coast, and that thing runs all the way almost to Atlanta. There's a few woodsy
Exactly.
places
And
between there and New
interstates,
York, but not
major
many.
interstates, yeah,
Yeah.
that are
So heading
never
south,
unoccupied. Yeah.
if I myself were to walk out the front door one morning and strip naked and decide to go somewhere, South Florida would be a damn good spot to go.
All right.
And it wouldn't be terrible hard to get there with a decent canoe.
Interesting. Yeah, because I imagine there's a lot more green belts pointing in that direction and just more advantageous
The further
thickness.
south you get in Georgia, the wider and slower the rivers run until you
Yeah.
get to the Okefenokee or the land of the trembling earth, where the water barely moves.
Yeah. And of course that's just a huge area to
It's
you get down there. Yeah. I mean
unbelievably big, and it
yeah.
changes all the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just don't think about them being in what middle Georgia. I've heard reports of them being like around Fayetteville and stuff, and I'm like, but how?
I will
I
tell
mean,
you one thing that's different here than most of the areas I hear about: Bigfoot. Not skunk ape, but Bigfoot. Skunk ape's typically south of here. We don't have caves. We have very, very few
right?
caves
Yeah,
because we're not on bedrock here. We're a few hundred, I don't know, we're maybe 20 miles south of bedrock. So if you go a little bit north, you run into spots where actual mountain tops start sticking out of the dirt, actual rock, granite.
right. Yeah,
A little bit south, and you'll be 500 feet above the nearest bedrock. So caves aren't really a thing here. So cave travel to this area is extremely unlikely, although admittedly, in a very heavy drought year, there would be more caves open because the water table is lower.
hmm
So maybe that was just an
maybe.
unusual circumstance, and that's what happened. I don't know.
Well, it's a fascinating story or event that happened to you, and
Hey man, I'm
and
not saying you got to believe me. I'm not saying you've got to believe the aspect of memory that I've used. I also don't claim it to be anything except an encounter I can't quite explain. I can tell you what happened and what I saw. And that's it.
sure, and, and that's fair
Do with it
enough.
as you please. He
And
didn't make
I,
no noises. We didn't
the
talk. I didn't visit a spaceship. It wasn't nothing like that. I just saw something I don't understand, and I struggle to
right.
explain it. I like to share it so that somebody can go, "Oh, I know what that was. That was Steven. Steven's been hanging out there for a couple of years. You ought to see his wife. She's powerful ugly."
Right.
Okay.
She's hotter than hell, man. Let me tell you.
Right.
Uh, no, it's fair enough. Hey, look, to be fair to you and the whole everything involved with that, I said, hey, man, I said live on air, are you full of shit? And you answered the question. Uh, fair
We
enough.
did the best I could.
So,
I mean, I'm like I said from the beginning, I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm not saying it was. I'm saying I
yeah,
saw a fuzzy critter, looked human, might have been human. I just can't explain why there was a guy with a fur coat out there at that time of day. There are no explanations that have satisfied me to it, but I've seen
sure.
some. And it
Well,
looked a little something like this.
I'm of the thinking that if Bigfoot or Sasquatch is flesh and blood, which I think is a good starting point at least. But if they're flesh and blood, they are some kind of undiscovered hominin, which puts them in the human species, like Neanderthal,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Denisovan, So it puts them in that type of category.
So I had this guy pitch this idea to me one time.
All right.
He asked me this.
I'm all ears.
He said, what if these creatures aren't specifically human, but much like a liger is a throwback of an earlier type of person? So occasionally people are born this way in the hinterlands of the world. And the people these are born to maybe know somebody who knows somebody or something, and they pass them off to families further down the line. I don't know exactly where he was going with the idea, but he approached it from this perspective. So many people go missing in national parks that some investigators believe that people are taking less fortunate members of their family to be lost intentionally in parks, and that some of these missing 411 things are actually explainable through negligence and abandonment. I don't know if I buy that, but it was an interesting thought. And he attached it to the idea of this abandonment concept and why you only find these in the most distant, faraway places. Now, I don't know how much I buy any of that, but
there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, but I don't know how to tie all that together.
Yeah, I don't know how you abandon a whatever you want to call it, disfigured person out in the woods, and somehow they become an 8 foot tall, 4 foot wide, perfectly fit fucking thing. Man, doesn't make any sense to me. They're much more likely to just die of hypothermia the first time it rains.
Or get eaten by a coyote.
Yeah. I mean, coyotes terrible.
Now we have anacondas and crap out there.
Yeah.
I got one last story for you, and this is one of those that it explains how difficult it can be to understand something you're seeing with your own eyes. The mid-90s, I was out hunting, waiting in a particularly old stand not far from my pop's house, when I saw the strangest thing I've ever laid eyes on up at that point. I saw a group of turkeys and a creature I could not identify. And I looked at that creature through a scope, and I looked at it real hard. And then I climbed down from the stand and I went home and sat there thinking on it until it suddenly occurred to me, wait, I know what I saw. That was an emu. But at the time, because my brain could not conceive of a 7-foot turkey, and it could not make any sense of the creature that was before me, I could not have looked at you and told you what it was I saw until my brain was able to compare it to every creature in my lexicon and come back and go, oh, wait, no, there are a few emu farmers over here. And during hurricanes and stuff, they sometimes get loose. I saw an emu.
Yeah.
Is that rarer than Sasquatch or a homeless guy? I don't know, but I couldn't shoot the emu either, even though it would have been perfectly legal. Because imagine trying to explain to a game warden that you weren't shooting at turkeys, but at an emu.
Right.
I just don't see it working. So I decided to just walk away until I could figure out what I was looking at.
Yes. Yeah, which brings us back around to Dogman, which is clearly some kind of escaped or perhaps escaped feral kangaroo, is my
Hey, man, I like the giant ground sloth concept. I've got a list on my channel I haven't really updated recently of possible dogman suspects. There's the giant baboon from western Madagascar that used to run around up until a few thousand years ago. You've got the giant ground sloth that existed all the way up through Texas and Missouri that fit the criteria for a 6-foot tall dog face shaped type critter. You've got what was the other? Oh yeah, the short faced bear, which isn't quite as big as everybody seems to believe it is. It's just a stockier version of like a brown bear. And then I mean, there's a few of them. Actual animals that actually existed that suit.
Yeah, dude, that is crazy stuff, man. But I can't get past the kangaroo idea.
I do like the kangaroo idea. I would like to eat a kangaroo. I just don't think they'd live in Georgia long enough for somebody to go, that's a kangaroo.
Yeah,
It's
right.
an invasive species. You can just drop them just like pigs. There is no season.
True.
And if I'd have recognized that emu at the time, I might have tried to pop a shot at it. But the fact of the matter was, I wasn't there hunting turkeys. Shooting a turkey out of season is a $10,000 fine.
Oh, okay. So, yeah,
So
I didn't realize that.
it never crossed my mind to fire anything in the direction of those birds.
Right.
No. And later on, I was thinking, so imagine the game warden catches me after missing an emu. And then he's like, what are you doing hunting turkeys? And I'm like, I wasn't hurting turkeys. I was shooting at an emu. How you reckon that's going to fly in court?
Not very well. You might as well say you were shooting at a Sasquatch. Yeah.
About as well as an emu flies. Yes, sir.
Man. Well, I'm gonna have to start wrapping it up, man.
Yeah, dude. I'm a professional at this stuff. Remember, the Sasquatch talks, the technical issues are part of the show.
Yeah, I know, right? That was funny. I'm glad I got it fixed, though, man. I'm glad we got to talk. But
fantastic.
So
I appreciate you having me.
No problem, man. And I'll have you back on. Sometimes I do like sometimes I'll just get a bunch of people together and have panel discussions like this, and more, and anything goes, like Bigfoot wise or whatever. You're always welcome to join that. But just like, where can people find you on YouTube? I'm guessing
YouTube, Caucasian Sasquatch. That's the whole thingy. I guess I interview other YouTubers is what I do. I look for small channels that I think have excellent content, but maybe the YouTube algorithm's not being friendly enough. Mm-hmm. And I go introduce them to 60 or 70 people on a live stream. We sit and have a talk only about YouTube content. I'm not going to ask anything about your mama, your daddy, your cousins, or little Pookie Joe down the street. I don't care about none of them. We're just talking YouTube content, terms of service, sound, OBS, StreamYard, technical issues, that kind of stuff. We cover pretty much the full gambit of YouTube.
That's interesting. I do something very similar, or I have, and I want to bring it back. And the funny thing is that I call it Other YouTubers, because it's a show about YouTube channels that I dig that aren't Bigfoot. Like,
I call it Sasquatch Shields, because I bring you in and just ham up your channel as hard as I can.
Okay,
and
so
then
it revolves around Sasquatch.
No, it revolves around YouTube, specifically YouTube creators, old, new, people who have 50 subscribers and are just hoping they're going to get a start, next to people who have 50,000 subscribers and have been doing it for 10 years.
I got
what's the difference? What kind of things work? What doesn't? What kind of changes have taken place? Somebody asked me if I was doing a documentary once, and I couldn't say no, because I am documenting a lot.
Gotcha. I feel what you're putting down now. And that's cool. But is like, what else do you have going on your channel? Is that pretty much primarily?
I do readings in 30 minutes or so. I'm going to be over on Scully's House of Thrillers playing the guard in Shawshank Redemption. They're doing a live reading using voice actors. And I do a few voices here and there. Every now and then I'll break out a decent Alex Jones, and I'll just take it all the way to the town. You know what I'm saying? We'll go block it down in the bank. We'll get Lorenzo to get us some power bars and a couple of cups of coffee. We'll just rock out. You make sure you got to get some of those extends tablets to elongate the junk. The dangly bits have to work right anyway. Nice. Gorge, put them up. So I got a few voices that I do, and I've been working with Scully doing a bit of voice acting. People request readings sometimes, and if it strikes my fancy, I'll do that. You know,
yeah.
Just most of my material is shorts. They're either jokes or something odd that I've noticed, or reactions, remixes, that kind of stuff. And every now and then, if I don't have a guest for a particular night, and I find some topic that I think needs some more, somebody would be interested in, I might put together 3 topics completely unrelated, like amber, diamonds, and opals. What do they have in common? They're all on the same show. That's it. There's no tying theme. Maybe the diamonds part will work. Maybe the opals part will work. Maybe none of it works. Maybe we end up talking about Bigfoot for 2.5 hours. I mean,
yeah.
The idea is to have a topic and go with it, and maybe it goes elsewhere, but we work with it. So, okay. Do you ever go hunting Bigfoot?
I do not.
Okay. But let me ask you this.
Sure.
Let's say you go out fishing one afternoon and you find a bona fide pixie. You're not looking for a pixie, but you find one and you catch it. You can prove incontrovertibly that pixies exist. Do you call the same people you would call about a Bigfoot or a dogman, or do you call a different group? I don't understand.
Yes, I take it straight to the fucking media, which is what you do with any of those things. Because once you open that once you take it to the media, you're untouchable. They're untouchable. It's the first fucking amendment. There ain't no Men in Black going to show up. That's fucking stupid.
You should fall in the whistleblower category at that point too. But Lockbeard's got a point. Prank call Hunter and chastise him and Corn pops a voice. I don't have a decent Biden. For whatever reason, it doesn't work. It's like Christopher Walken. For some reason, I can't lock down the meter or something. Just don't. I got a decent Alex Jones. I can do Goofy. I can do Snagglepuss and Yogi Bear and Boo Boo and a handful of others. It's just, what's funny is I had no idea I could do this stuff my whole life. I had no clue. I did not know I did these impressions until one day I did it during a live stream. And my brother comes, and I guess during the live stream, someone mentioned it. And then I asked in general, I don't do impressions. What are you talking about? My brother shows up the next day with a list. You have a spot on Alex Jones. You're Goofy as killer. And he's like, here, you can do these voices. I can't do Snagglepuss. You do a perfect Snagglepuss. I got to go listen to it, but apparently, yeah, no, I can totally do it. The Cowardly Lion, it's just things that apparently I did without consciously registering in the conversation. I would just imitate stuff.
Yeah. The frogs are gay.
I'm holding you up. I'm sorry, bud. No, you have a lovely evening. I appreciate it.
No, it's all good. I do impressions. I could do impressions of people that do impressions, if that makes any sense. Like I do a pretty good Donald Trump when I could dial it in. Like, but it's all about dialing it in with me. Yeah.
I can tell you how to do a perfect Alex Jones. What you do is you got to start with the Hulkster, and you got to start talking like Hulkamania was the best thing that ever happened. Right. But when you're doing that, you throw the word brother on the end of it. So it's like every time you go down to the ring, you got to throw somebody else in there, brother, And then there's the Macho Man Randy Savage approach where it's, oh yeah, you got to dig into it. Right. So that's that's the same energy with a different delivery. But Alex Jones, you remove the brother, you take it down about 0.2 of a notch, and then you just follow through with something absolutely insane.
Just say something stupid.
There you go.
The frogs are all gay. They're making the frogs gay.
Man, we got to get the fluoride out of the water. These chemtrails are starting to get into my hair and making it curl. I'm going to be nappy for the rest of the week. Lorenzo, give me some more power bars.
Good stuff, man. Hey, I might hit you up for some. I might give you a narration gig.
Lines, baby. Send me a script. Man. Hey, come do Sasquatch shills. I'll give you one for free.
All right.
It's got to be a reasonably timed script, like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, something along there. No 2.5.
No. I'm not
signing up for that shit, dude. I'm good. I ain't that good.
I'm talking about narrating a fucking trailer. We're talking like
whatever, man. Yeah. In a world where there's a Sasquatch that can finally talk, In a world where the narrator gargles rocks.
There you go. Something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we can work
like
with it.
it.
I'll work with it. I'll send you a couple of samples. You send me some lines. I'll send you some samples. You can pick what you want.
Awesome, man. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up, man. Great conversation.
Thank you.
Fascinating stuff there, dude, with your story. My buddy Brian King Sharp is he's gonna be dying to have you on his show to really dive into that, man. Get into the minutia.
Just remember, Sasquatch shields so you don't have to.
Yeah, I like it. And yeah, man. Shit, we could do a part 2. We could, we gotta get you up into North Georgia, man.
Dude, I just let me tell you what I'm doing, what I got going on backstage. I haven't been doing a whole lot of stuff because I had some
we're
friends.
still live. We're still live.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good. This is public. This isn't private. This is fine. I just bought a 2002 Xterra with a supercharger 4x4 so I can go to all those little places that maybe you shouldn't go with a 2-wheel drive. Right. I'm not talking rock crawling or trail climbing or none of that
definitely
crap.
not.
Somebody's slightly rough driveway.
Yeah. Creek crossings. It could be muddy, but it's mostly dirt road. It's mostly gravel. Like the state roads, dude, are actually well maintained, but you might have to cross a creek or two.
Right.
So that 4-wheel drive,
yeah.
Yeah.
Dude,
there's 1,000 of these roads up here, and I know 500
Dude, I
of
used
them.
summer up there, man. I used to go up to around War Woman, up in that area around Helen.
Mm-hmm.
We would spend sometimes 2 or 3 months up there camping in a summer. Did that 2 or 3 years. So like it is a huge area, and there's an unbelievable number of little hollows and wrinkles and just spots where it looks like there's a mountain, but there's not because the trees are there. It's actually a hole.
Yeah.
You just can't see it.
No, it's a great area. There's tons of area, just like you said. And man, I found the coolest fucking camping spot on top of an actual mountain.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it existed. I'm like, this is like something that should be in Colorado. It's on the mountain, top of the mountain, dude. It's just like, yeah, come up here, man. We'll drive those roads. We'll bang on some trees, man. We'll get them squatches all worked up. Woohoo! Catch them on film.
It's been 25, 30 years since I caught a trout, and I have been known to drown a worm occasionally. I'm not adverse to some fishing or just sitting there and throwing stuff in the water and feeding the fish. I don't care, man. We'll feed ducks. I can give less of a shit.
Yeah. No, it's funner than hell up here, man. We'll do a Squatch Talk camp out this fall.
That sounds like a freaking plan, bro. I'm gonna try to make it out to Louisiana. I got there's Scully from Scully's House of Thrillers. There's Truth Be Told Audits, Ajot from Ajot's Corner, Michelle's Mobile Media, Cho for Life, Road Dogs, and Car Thief News are all in about a 300-mile swath from part of Louisiana through the edge of Texas, kind of.
Yeah, right.
So and with luck, I might be able to hit all 3 of them in about a week and a half and get 10 people that I've interviewed, maybe.
Cool.
With some proper logistics and a miracle.
Of course. Well, cool, man.
I appreciate having you, bud. Drop me backstage and do your play out because I'll sit here and talk till doomsday.
No, I'm just gonna do a cold ending, man, because I gotta get rolling, man. It's been a long day, and I barely made it to the show, honestly. But thanks for being here, man. And like I said, you're welcome back anytime. And
thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I like talking. I'm good at it.
Yeah, man. And we'll get you up to the Squatch Talk Camp Fest we're gonna have here in the fall. It's better than a conference. God dang it. But yeah, thanks for being here, bro. And thanks everybody for watching tonight. Hope you dug it, man. we'll get Caucasian back on as a panel member or another show, different topic. There's 1,000 different things to talk about in the Bigfoot world, right? So, of a little voice I heard, not really. Okay, we'll see about that. Catch you guys next time, man. Gonna try and get a guest for Friday. Thanks for being here, bro. And we're out.